if we're going to speak about Odin in particular, Matthias, with the misconceptions, I guess the one that came to me from a conversation I got myself into today on Facebook, because I'm a knob and I do that, was about Odin having two. Well, obviously he's usually depicted with one eye. Now, I think there was a guy who'd got a tattoo. The quality of the tattoo is kind of irrelevant. It was Odin, and he had both his eyes. And there was a bunch of people commenting saying how it was disrespectful to have Odin with two eyes, because you're not honoring the sacrifice he made to gain the knowledge of the runes. Well, to gain whatever, just knowledge in general. I think people were kind of getting on their high horse saying it's disrespectful for him to have two eyes. So it got me thinking, because obviously he wasn't born one-eyed, so there must be a huge part of history or the literature or something like of his life, in theory, where he has two eyes. Do we just kind of forget about all that? Is that never really shown or spoken about, or is it mentioned in the literature of him, a period where he has both eyes and he's kind of to be older? Do you know what I mean? Like, do we ever relate back to that time before? Because obviously we know he created the world. I imagine he had both eyes then.
Yeah. In theory, yeah. So you're making a grave error right now.
It won't be the first time. So.
The error is to infer linearity into mythology, right? And this is what people do a lot, right? Especially nowadays, because we have an expectation that time is linear. And we can go into like this deep quantum physics rabbit hole they'll tell you otherwise, but we certainly seem to experience time in a linear kind of way, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works.
I would say, before you get too far, if you don't agree with what I said in the Facebook group in this little chat, we're just going to edit this part out of the podcast completely. So if there's like a gap where it makes no sense, that's what happened.
Fair enough. So okay, but my point is that it does not matter. It does not matter at all if he's got one eye or two eye or 17, assuming that has any mythological meaning. The point is that the story about him giving up his eye is a story that tells us something profound about life and mysticism and understanding knowledge and a lot of other things. That's really what that is all about. Did he have two eyes when him and his two brothers created the world? Well, I mean, yeah, sure. If we want to put everything into that linear perception of time, sure, he probably did have two eyes at that point, right? And then later on, he gives up his eye, and we can see a lot of scholarship does want to put all these events in mythology into that linear timeline, especially because we have Ragnarök as a definitive moment of ending the cosmos. We have also the creation as the beginning of the cosmos and all that stuff. So there's people like that linearity between those two polar opposites, the creation and the destruction. But the point is, though, that people generally in these pre-Christian religions tend to see things in cyclical ways, right? So the linearity of things doesn't really matter that much, because what we're really interested in is the profound wisdom that each of these stories can tell us about our existence in this current moment, right? So in this current moment, it's Odin can be a young dude without a beard and two eyes, and a old man with a long beard and a floppy hat and one eye, and he can probably also be a horse or a eagle, or an earthworm. Who the hell knows? the point is is really what the story can tell us, and what parts of the story we can use and apply in our lives right now. So it's like somebody arguing over one or two eyes to me is like, okay.
I think for me it was just this whole idea that they were trying to tell this guy that it was dishonorable to show Odin with
this is a very like what are you, the heathen Taliban or something like that, like people trying to tell others like how they're supposed to like think of a Nordic god? Like that makes no sense to me. That's for other religions,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed very strange. So then that's what kind of got me wondering whether we ever saw Odin with two eyes. And I actually reached out to Luciano to ask him whether he knew of any instances in the artwork, and he was like, well, it's tough to tell because if you get a figure and it has two eyes, you obviously the defining factor is the one eye. So you automatically know if he's got one eye, it's Odin. So if it has two, you don't really know. So that's why I was wondering with you whether in like the saga sense we kind of have any.
Well, there's definitely, I can't remember the poem, but there's a poem that has a riddle.
I can't tell. I'm really digging for you to find somewhere with him with two eyes.
There's a poem that has a riddle asking what is it that has 10 legs or 10 feet, I think it is, and 2 hands and 3 eyes, right? And that's Odin on Sleipnir, because the horse is 8-legged. And that one assumes that he's got one eye, right? Because Sleipnir has the other 2 eyes out of those 3. There's more to that story that I'm currently blanking on, but that's just something to keep in mind. There's definitely a riddle that suggests the one eye. Snorri tells us that he's got one eye. Where else do we find it? So that one thing is interesting, and there's no mentions of eyes in this one, but in Ynglinga Saga, the beginning of the Norwegian kings, the collection of the Norwegian kings sagas, we're told that he can appear as a young man, he can appear as an old man, he can take pretty much any shape and appearance that he wants, right? So then that should tell us then that he can both appear with one eye and 2 eyes, I guess, in whichever situation he wants to. But aside from that, there's no like that comes to mind, at least no source that says yes, he definitely has 2 eyes at this point. Sorry.
Fucking, we're gonna have to cut this whole section out. We're just gonna have to edit this whole part out and pretend it never happened. I'm gonna have to go back and delete my comments.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I was really hoping you were going to back me up, but it was, like in situations like that, I'm pretty stupid, and I get myself involved because I don't like seeing this kind of stance of jumping on your high horse and telling people that because you've got it with 2 eyes and you are wrong. So I'll kind of just put myself in there and pit myself just against that because I don't like seeing it. And even if it means I'm going to be wrong, it's just to try and take a stance of just stop being an asshole about something that isn't particularly a big deal.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I get that, and I think it's honorable, if nothing else, to stand up for the little guy in that situation and tell people to shut up.
Okay.
What do you think, Jakub? Do you think he's got 1 or 2 eyes in general?
That's a hard question. But I usually draw him with just 1 eye to make him different from like other gods or guys. Because
it's such a defining factor, isn't it, as well?
Yes,
having one
exactly.
eye, it's so easy to tell instantly that's Odin.
Yes, because otherwise they would all be just bearded guys.
True.
I guess, yeah.
Just look like the back line in a concert hall at a heavy metal show.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. I was actually I was thinking one thing. We do have some figurines from the Viking Age, from like Viking Age archaeology, that suggest that. So these are these little heads that look like they have been on pins, that maybe on clothing, or you could like put them into something, sort of like a little man's head with the two
with the ravens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so these raven horns that come out of the head, or whatever they are, and they there's a couple of those that look like the figure originally had two eyes, but then one of them has been like cut off, scraped off in one way or another. So that suggests perhaps some kind of meaning to that. The idea of like, because think about that, you're making an object, a figure, you're creating a face in a certain way, and with two eyes, and then you decide to destroy one of it afterwards with sort of like a violent insertion, or however you want to express that. Like that's interesting, right? Because that kind of suggests a materiality to the myth that is being played out in real life as these people are doing some kind of ritual or whatever, right? So that's just something to think about. I mean, I don't know what it really has represented to the peoples who did it, but it goes along with the idea of first having two eyes and then taking one out.
I just don't want to talk about eyes anymore. It's just all subject now.
He's just pissed off.